Okay, team, what's up? Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to Leadership Thursday, and welcome back to the PT on Ice Daily Show. Thrilled to have you here. I am Dr. Jeff Moore, currently serving as the CEO of ICE, and always happy to be here on Leadership Thursday, which, as always, is Gut Check Thursday. Let's start off every Thursday how we always do. Let's talk about the workout of the week. Here's what we've got cooked up for you. We've got 21-15-9. Couldn't be a more classic rep scheme. We've got thrusters and bar-facing burpees. So hopefully the first thing you're thinking is it looks a lot like Fran, right? We've got two movements. We've got that classic rep scheme, but I'm going to argue it's going to be a bit worse. With Fran, we've got push-pull, right? So at least you're pushing that thruster and then you're pulling up on that rig. Now we've kind of got push-push, right? So we're going to go thruster and then hitting that push-up motion during that burpee. It's probably going to be a little more painful. Additionally, you're probably not going to be able to sprint through quite as fast, looking at how long a burpee takes compared to a pull-up. So in Fran, you might be able to out-sprint the darkness, right? You might be able to get done with the workout before that darkness really catches up to you. Here, I think you might be living in it for a while. So just let us know how it goes. Make sure you tag us, Ice Physio, #IceTrain. Let's have some fun with the workout over the next couple of days. As far as upcoming courses, the thing I want to highlight this week is that virtual ICE is open. So as you all know, our virtual mentorship, we only open it every quarter for a couple days, bring in a new group, add into the crew, and then close those doors and launch for the next quarter. We are trying to hold that price steady. It's been $29 a month forever. It's still $29 a month. Yes, it's CEU eligible, but more importantly, it's a great way as you're going through ICE courses to be able to be in that group, hold you accountable. Every Tuesday we meet, going over case studies, new thoughts that aren't built into our courses. It's a way to deepen your knowledge and really make it more clinically implementable, if you will, by every week revisiting and expanding on some of our concepts. So if you want to jump in, go to Virtual ICE on the website. ptonice.com, as always, is where everything lives. Let's talk about trusting the process. So trust the process. Absolutely, right? You should totally trust the process. But I want to unpack a couple things around this conversation that aren't talked about enough. So number one, trust the process. Everyone speaks of this in the early stages. Okay, so kind of the classic conversation around this topic is, hey, when you're just getting started, you might not see gains right away. Don't worry, trust the process, right? It'll show up in time. That's clearly very relevant. And certainly when you think about areas like fitness, where we often talk about this, yes, you're not going to stack on a ton of muscle in the first couple weeks of training, right? You've got to trust the process, and those gains do show up down the road. There are certain areas where that early phase, this concept is the most important. But I'm going to argue today that in the world of business, it's really in the later phases where I think this concept becomes significantly more important. So let me build the argument. So early on in business, the connections are very, very clear, right? You don't need nearly as much trust that what you're doing is reaping a reward, simply because cause and effect are much clearer early on. For example, if you're building a practice and you form a new relationship, and you see an increase in customers, it's pretty obvious that those increased customers came from that relationship, because you don't have a ton of relationships yet. And any increase in customers is really obvious because you don't have a ton of customers yet either. Additionally, it's really easy when you run an ad or something of that nature to see, again, that swell of business following that ad is quite noticeable, and it's very clear where it came from. Following up with your customers is a lot easier. Number one, there aren't as many of them. So it's easier to dive in and figure out, hey, how did you wind up here? Where did you come from? And there aren't as many people delivering your service. So you don't have to bring everyone together and try to kind of coagulate the data and see, hey, where's everybody coming from? The connections are simply clearer. There's not as much noise. Little changes make very obvious results. And it's not as hard to collect or aggregate the data because there aren't quite as many people delivering the service. Early on, you don't need as much trust. 5 years down the road, it's much harder, right? It's much more challenging. You often find yourself saying things like, I have no idea where that person came from, right? There's so many more things going on. There's so much more noise that it's much, much harder to prove, did this action result in a certain effect? Now, we fight this valiantly, right? Everybody, and you should, is trying to track everything, right? Whether it's where a customer landed on your website, or if you're running an ad, you're putting a tag on there so you can see, hey, when that person came to the website, if we track them through to the commerce side, did they actually convert? You're doing your absolute best to track everything. But the larger you get, the more mature the organization, it becomes significantly more challenging to definitively prove that any individual action resulted in any significant outcome. There's simply too many variables. You don't know, did it come from word of mouth? You really can't track that all that well. There's so many things going on that it's tough to have that clarity that you had early on. The reality is, growth results in necessarily losing some clarity on cause and effect. The more mature the business, the more true this is. So, what's the answer? The answer is to very much embrace and trust the process. In the absence of proof, you're just going to need to check the boxes of what's known to work. I would argue the earlier that you can do this, the earlier that you can stop wasting your time demanding proof of every single action that you did having a reward or a response, the more efficient you're going to be and the faster you're going to succeed. The earlier that you can say, I no longer need to see proof that this thing that I'm doing is reaping a reward, I'm just going to do all of these things with absolutely ruthless consistency. And I'm going to trust that by doing so, the end result is going to be additional growth and more progress. The earlier you can trust the process, the more efficient and more successful you're going to be. But there is a catch here. It's got to be a proven process. And this is what I want us to really think about this morning. Team, we are living in an era of outrageous claims, right? We are living in an area where a huge amount of people that can't do are claiming to be able to teach, right? They're claiming to be able to get you unbelievable outcomes, even though they themselves don't really have a track record of being able to do so. That is the era in which we live. Heavily marketed, thinly veiled, outrageous claims. That is really where we are. Because of that reality, you need to dig deeper. The passion behind this topic is coming from having seen so many people over the years come to me and say, here's where I'm at. And me thinking, dude, how did you fall for that? Like that person, there was no reason to believe that those claims were being backed up by any significant track record of proof. The person simply did not dig deep enough. And that's what I want to say to you today. Should you trust the process? Yes. After you have went through extensive lengths to prove that that process actually results in the real world in the outcomes that you're seeking. This is across every domain. Clinically, if you're going to choose a mentor, if you're going to lock into somebody and say, I am going to treat the way that person treats. I'm going to ask that person what the big rocks are, and darn it, I am going to implement those in every patient that I see. If you're going to do that, you better have spent a solid year around that person, watching them day in and day out succeed with patients. A wide variety of patients, a wide range of complexity of patients, until you get to a point where you're like, look, that person gets it done better than everybody else I've seen, almost regardless of who shows up in front of them. The methods that person's utilizing month after month after month after month consistently work. I buy it. That person can actually get it done. I am going to trust their process. In Con Ed, at ICE, I hope you never sign up for a certification until you've taken one of our courses and went back into the clinic and implemented and decided for yourself, do the tools that I learned in that weekend course or that online course when I went back in my clinic, was I demonstrably better? Was I more efficient? Was I having more fun? Did it actually work? Until we prove that to you, right? I don't want you to sign up for some long series of courses. I want you to test us, and I want you to go and see, does it actually work? That's the kind of level I want you digging in on everything. In business, you don't buy that someone can grow your business until you have talked to a bunch of people who aren't affiliated, right? Who maybe have done some of their mentorship, but are not actively in their program. And you reach out in your private circle and say, hey, has anybody worked with so-and-so? I want to have some conversations. And you dive in and say, is it really as good as they say it is? Right? Were the principles that they taught able to grow you? Anybody can put that on an Instagram ad. Did it actually work for you? Is your business 3 times bigger now than it was a year and a half ago, like they said it would be? Dive deep and ask the hard questions. I love it when people reach out to me and they're thinking about opening an Onward, right? And they say, look, I want to talk to a couple other owners. I love it. They want to hear from the people. Did they actually deliver? I love when people who are getting coached up to become faculty at ICE, I hear them reaching out to other lead faculty, right? They're not offending division leaders by doing that. They're just going out and saying, hey, here's kind of what I'm being sold. Did it actually shake out like this? In looking for multiple sources. Business leaders, I hope you all are never offended by that. People are not second guessing you. Yeah, they are, but they're not disrespecting you. They're just doing the work. They're saying, look, I heard you, but now I'm going to go see across multiple sources if what you're saying historically has added up. Are you actually able to get the job done? Have you proven that? Or are you just saying that because you want your business enterprise to grow? Do you have the goods? Team, in fitness, to me, with CrossFit, I had never heard of it before 2013, 14. But as I got into it, I looked around for proof. And the first thing I saw, and the second thing, in the third month, in the second year, is that everybody who just consistently did what was on the whiteboard and showed up 5 days a week had what I wanted, meaning tremendously well-rounded fitness. I was shocked by where they wound up. They had tremendous cardio engines. They were strong as all get out. They had tremendous skills in gymnastics and mobility. The people who did the whiteboard as written 5 days a week, as hard as they could, and use that process, wound up exactly where I wanted to be. You can only watch that so many times until you're ready to say, okay, I believe it. I buy it and I'm all in. So yes, right? Trust the process. And yes, put your head down and check the boxes. But after you've established certainty. Now, I want to finish by saying, here's why this is so critical. Here's why doing the legwork to prove to yourself, to be fully committed that this person can actually get it done and that it should thus be transferable to your success. The reason it's so important is 2 things. Number 1, once you do put your head down, and I am totally advocating for you to put your head down, right? Head down, stop looking for proof of every single thing, and just check the boxes with absolute rigor. I'm encouraging that. But once you do that, there aren't a lot of checkpoints. So once you've committed and you've said, I'm just going to keep checking these boxes and I'm going to trust the process, you're not really looking for proof, right? Because we've just established it gets harder and harder to gain any. So you've just simply got to trust. The problem is if you're wrong, there aren't a lot of checkpoints to reveal to you that you're wrong. So you're going to go a long ways down that trail. There is going to be a tremendous investment until you realize, oh man, that system or that person or whatever didn't actually have the goods. I should have done more front end homework. The second reason is because if you've done the work to truly prove it to yourself, if you've watched that clinician for a year and become absolutely certain their method works, if you've taken a couple courses and become absolutely certain that when you implement it, you're better for it, if you've done the work to be positive or as close to it as you can be, you're much less likely to quit. Once you put your head down and say, I'm just going to check these boxes, I know it's going to work, you are much more likely to go the distance to a point where you actually begin to reap very serious rewards because you won't be second guessing yourself because you've got certainty in your corner. But if you didn't do the work, you're going to be saying much earlier than you should, am I sure this is the right path? And now you're going to need proof and validation, which, as we've just talked about, is hard to come by. So now you're going to quit early. And if anything abbreviates success, it's early cessation of effort. Because there aren't a lot of checkboxes or checkpoints along the way to tell you whether or not you're on the right path, and because going the distance is so critical to success, you have to do the work to increase your certainty that that person's process or that system is going to work for you. Do that work and then trust the process. Understand it's probably more important late in the game, at least in business, when things get cloudy and murky, than it is early on. I hope that spins the idea of trust the process maybe a little bit different way in your brain, and certainly encourages you to go one step further on drilling down to be certain the process you're about to trust has actually proven merits historically. Have a wonderful Thursday, team. We'll see you next week. Enjoy that Gut Check Thursday workout. Cheers.